So thank you once again. Good morning, everyone. Let me also just quickly introduce myself. I'm Erno. I have different things I do in life, like software developer, like managing companies, things like this. But basically, in the last 40 years of my career, I was dealing with software and security. And that is how I got to this project. And this time, we will talk about, well, as you can see from the title, data security, specifically put in the context of GIS. But of course, let me just summarize how this more or less 1 hour will look like. We will spend the first part with general introduction to security, because most probably most of you haven't dealt with specifically security yet. Maybe some of you did, maybe some of you even had some issues, security issues around your systems that you manage. Nevertheless, it's good to start really from the very basic things, like even linguistics, you know, like what's security, what's the meaning of the world, and how you should imagine this whole world of security to behave. So in this sense, we will start with general things, and step by step, we will go and discuss more specific issues related to data security and then security of GIS. And then, given that this will be only at the beginning of this morning, more or less a 1 hour part where we will talk about security, we will only tackle one single chapter or one single issue from all the, you know, millions of things that we could have discussed about security, and that will be data exposure. So namely, how to keep your data hidden from those people you don't want to show your data to. That will be the second part of the talk, and then we will have a short wrap up in form of some very, again, high level principles about how to design secure systems, how to manage secure systems as well. If you have any questions, please use the, as Giz just said, please use the chat, and maybe I will not reflect to the questions right away, but we will try to have some time at the end of this 1 hour block to answer the questions. So we will have a Q&A at the end. So as promised, we will start with data security essentials, basics, like what data security is all about. And as I said, what security is all about. I promised you to start off from linguistics. What is interesting from this point of view is that when we talk about security, actually in the English language, we have two distinct words, two distinct terms, or well, are they two distinct terms or just synonyms? So the question is, we have two words, security and safety. And the question is, are they synonyms? Because sometimes we use them, you know, interchangeably. And what is also very interesting is that the most of the languages in the world do not actually distinguish between these two things. Like if you speak Spanish, for example, it's seguridad. In Dutch, it's, I don't know, Veiligkeit. In Finnish, it's turvallisuus, whatever. So Sicherheit in German. Actually, most of the languages do not distinguish between security and safety. English does, and what is even more important when it comes to engineering, we have to distinguish, because they're two different things, and you have to understand this at the very, very beginning. You have to understand the difference clearly. In case of security, especially when it comes to cybersecurity, it's pretty much obvious that security, when we talk about security, we talk about malicious, intentional acts done by intelligent people. They know stuff about how to, well, let's say the magic word here, how to hack your systems. Basically, this is an act of maliciousness, intention by the bad guys, by the attackers, who intentionally wants to make you harm, wants to steal your data, wants to, you know, crash your system, wants to modify your data. And in this sense, again, sorry for having such a heavyweight thing right in the morning, but basically security is all about paranoia, being paranoid about what they can do, what other people, what malicious people can do with your systems, with your data. So as opposed to this, when we, especially in, as I said, in engineering, and as I said, I even had some argumentation with some native English speakers who tried to convince me that these are basically synonyms. And well, it's perfectly okay if you take them as synonyms, but from engineering point of view, security is what I just said. Safety, however, is basically, you know, in English, we have this term act of God. It's just, you know, happens on a probabilistic basis. Some would even say governed by Murphy's laws. So it's all about the bad luck. It's all about having an accident, having natural disasters, earthquakes, floods, things like this. So that's when we talk about safety. It's not an intelligent actor who intentionally wants to make you harm, but still, you know, it happens. In some cases, the protection techniques that we can apply is the same, and in many cases it does differ. So that's why I said it's important to distinguish between these two things, because in some cases it's not all the same. If we are facing an intelligent adversary, an enemy who, you know, tries to hack us, tries to attack us, and we have to protect, or if we just want to protect against accidents or unintentional acts that just happen in the universe from time to time, unfortunately. Also, it's not even on the slide, but just as a kind of side note, when we talk about security or safety, it's all about talking about the future. So it's not about when we say, I am secure for the moment, I am secure as we speak. I'm sitting here in this room and hopefully the building will not collapse, which is a safety issue. I'm not saying that it's not collapsing at the moment. I'm not saying I'm under attack at the moment. When I say I am secure, I'm using present tense. Nevertheless, believe me, my mind is in the future. When we talk about security, it's always a talk about future events, future intentional or unintentional acts we are afraid of, we want to protect against. And this is very important because, again, of this confusion about the present and the future, but there is also a third thing. Based on what I can state that I'm safe in this chair, in this building I'm sitting at? Basically from my past experience. So what I know about how things can go wrong comes from my past experience. Based on that, I predict the future. Why? To be able to say something about my present state, or even more importantly, to be able to know what is to be done to protect myself against future threats. So this is the whole story, a little bit of philosophy, a little bit of linguistics, but this is really the starting point about how you should think about security. So dealing with security is basically, you know, like having an insurance. You invest into something to protect yourselves against some losses in the future. If you don't do that, it will hurt. So how it can hurt? It can hurt in many different ways. These days you have certain compliance schemas. You may lose compliance. You may, you know, you have GDPR, for example, or different types of laws in different countries, which basically make you to protect the data of your customers. Otherwise, if somebody steals that, you will have to pay a fine. So these are the direct losses. But there is an even more danger of the serious loss or a serious damage that such an undesired event can cause, and that is basically loss of reputation. So just to conclude finally with this whole philosophy about what security is all about, bad guys are interested in causing damages. And the worst type of damage that can ever happen to you is to lose reputation on the market. So if you know you are always being hacked and that gets public, you will lose reputation, and with the reputation you will also lose market share or trust. If you are not on the market, if you are not competing on the market, if you are a governmental organization, still you need to maintain trust into your services, into your products, and security is one of those things that can easily eat up the trust that your users have in your systems. So this is the big picture. And then when it comes to GIS security, actually, I don't know if you ever tried to Google for like, okay, GIS and security. This is not only true for GIS, but also to some other things. Basically, you will find two types of relationships between GIS and security. The first one is when you use GIS for security reasons, right? If you want to put on the map certain incidents, you want to do some kind of spatial correlation of events. You want to say, okay, so these types of events always happen in this area and not in this area, or in this part of the building and not in that part of the building. So this is pretty common that we put security incidents, security whatever's onto the map, and this is the first type of relationship. But in our case, we will talk more about the other type of relationship between GIS and security, and that is security of GIS. So not when GIS is used to show something to security people, but the concern I already mentioned, like, can they interfere? Can the bad guys do something with your GIS data, your geospatial data, to make you harm, as I said, on different levels? Related things, related concerns are privacy. So if in your pool of data you happen to have some kind of personal data of your users, of individuals whom you track on the map, whatever it is, then obviously you have privacy as a concern. You don't want private data to get to the public through your systems. So it's all about personal data. But I already mentioned GDPR. Compliance is also very important here. Again, primarily related to privacy. Again, just to mention GDPR, but in several other domains, wherever you may apply some kind of, or you may use some kind of GIS, like in healthcare, you may have the HIPAA, which is a US-based compliance schema, and so on and so on and so on. So compliance is also a very important issue here. Let me throw in something very interesting related to the relationship between security and compliance. Some people may say, yeah, security is something like a compliance schema. I have to comply ISO, I don't know, 27,000 and whatever. But there is an interesting statement I really just wanted to throw in as a kind of eye-opener. They say that when you deal with when you have a compliance issue, when you want to comply with certain schemas, like for example GDPR, HIPAA, or whatever it is, compliance will get you out of jail, or will not let you to get to jail, because in many countries that's law, that you have to comply with these things if you do certain activities on the market or wherever. So compliance will keep you out of jail. But security is a little bit different, part of it, of course, but security, dealing with security, will keep you out of the news. And that's very important, because if you get into the news, trust is gone. You will lose your users, and you will, as I said, have this worst type of damage that you can have, which is reputation, loss of reputation. So just to repeat once again, compliance will keep you out of the jail. Security, dealing with security, will keep you out of the news. And that's very interesting statement here. So it's all about, against malicious interference with geographical data, partially, again, containing possibly even private data, personal data of your users. And actually, mainly, I would say the GIS security or data security in the context of GIS is basically data security. So there are not too many specialities here. It's just data security, because you work with data, a special kind of data, of course, but still data, and you have to protect it. What is usually mentioned or emphasized in this sense, from the point of view of like specialities in GIS, are kind of collected here on this slide. First of all, data minimization, but again, don't think that this is special GIS type of thing. So this is pretty generic data security issue. Data minimization basically means don't store what you don't need. So if you don't need a piece of data at all, you don't want to process that piece of data, you don't have to show that piece of data on the map to your users, wherever, just don't store it. So always be aware of the data you need and then get rid of the data you don't need, because maybe it's a sensitive piece of data you unnecessarily have in your system, making it worse if somebody hacks your system, if somebody steals data from you. Just to repeat once again the word unnecessarily. This for data minimization, you have several options as I would say solutions or technical tricks or technical things you can and may do. One of those is tokenization. Tokenization basically means if you just want to have some kind of aggregated data. So you have data, you have geospatial data, you may have also personal data around your system, and you are not really interested in who those individuals are, John Smith or somebody else. You just want to have aggregated data, like in average in this area, this is the amount of people who move around or whatever. Then you may want to introduce a tokenization, replacing John Smith with a token with a unique ID from which nobody will know it's John Smith. And then you are good from GDPR point of view. You don't care then. If somebody steals this data, they will just see that user number XYZ moved around here, but they will not know anything about the individual. And that's the usual concern, just to repeat once again, privacy and the security of personal data. So instead of sensitive data like email addresses or names or social security numbers or you name it, store only some unique IDs. And of course, if need be, still at some very protected place in your outside of your common database, you may still have some kind of linkage like John Smith is user XYZ if you want to have such kind of information later on, but that should be stored separately from the main database where you have just a unique, with which the system works with. So the other thing is the principle of least privilege. Let me start with that one, which can be translated also to something like the need to know basis. It's not about storing the data, but it's all about accessing the data. So now we're talking about, okay, you are storing only the data you need for any kind of purpose in your system. Who can access this data? Principle of least privilege says, let me read it up from the slide because it's very essential. Every program and every user of the system should operate using the least set of privileges, which are just enough, which are just necessary for that system component or that user to accomplish their job. Once again, if you give them more, you unnecessarily widen the possible consequences of a successful attack. So against those, their accounts or that component of the system. So this is what principle of least privilege says, and it's a very, very strong and important principle because, I said that you want to protect yourselves against future events, but basically this means you want to keep the consequences of those future events limited, right? But if you give somebody unnecessarily too many permissions, too wide access, you unnecessarily keep wider the possible consequences. So to put it very simply, it will hurt more if they hack a system which does not obey the principle of least privilege. So everyone should have access on a need-to-know basis. If they don't need to know something, they shouldn't have access to. So on a very high level, you should start with something like separating public data from private data. You may have in your system certain things which are public, and then you don't care. Everyone can access that. It's not sensitive data. You can, just publish it. And there is also private data, which should be restricted. Not everyone should be able to access the private data. Level 1. Level 2, this is not even enough because private data still does not necessarily mean that all, permissions should be unique for everyone who has to do something with the system data. You may have certain levels of users, admins, I don't know, HR people, doctors, first responders, you name it. It all depends on the nature of the system. So basically, even if it is private data and not public data, you need to distinguish between users and users groups. And this is nothing else than the good old access control. So you need to have access control. What is access control? Well, in a very simple way, what I just described. Limiting certain users in accessing certain features, certain data, certain parts of the data from the system. But if we dig deeper, you will see that access control actually comprises, or at least two components in a computer system, in an IT system. First, authentication, and second, authorization. It's a little bit confusing because they're pretty similar words. Nevertheless, they mean different things. Authentication is knowing who is the user, knowing who is on the other side of the line. You have a user, you have another component with which you communicate, interchange data. You simply have to know who is on the other side, because maybe a bad guy is on the other side impersonating some good guy and feeding you bad data, right? Or asking you to give them data and you say, yeah, this is somebody I can give data, but at the end of the day, it's not the right person, it's not the right user on the other side of the line, to put it very simply. So that's authentication, having identities of the components or of the users that you work with in your system. And then the second step, once you know who they are, you have to have authorization. What is authorization? Nothing else than a yes or a no answer to a question. And the question is obviously like, does this guy have access to this type of data or this, part of the system or whatever? So authorization is nothing else than a decision whether they can or cannot access something. And authentication and authorization cannot live without each other. So obviously, to do authorization, the first most important information is who it is, what they want to do, and with which piece of data. And then you can cook up your yes or your no. And then some would even add accountability to an access control solution, which is about logging, about monitoring what's happening in the system, to be able to at least, do some kind of post-mortem analysis, analyze what happened in the system, or what is happening in the system in real life, even on a geospatial basis. And this is again pretty much a generic thing about IT systems, but specifically for GIS, there is one important challenge here, and that's interoperability. And this is an interoperability issue not only related to the geospatial data like coordinates and vectors and bitmaps and whatever you want to show, but this is interoperability of the access control permissions, of the rules, because if you are integrating data from several sources, those sources may have very different models about who can do what, different roles, different rules, different user types. And when you're integrating, your job is not only to integrate the geospatial data, your job is also to integrate the access control data so that you can have an integrated control of the access to the system or to the data stored in the system. And also during the rendering of the data, you may also apply permission-based rendering. So basically filtering of the geospatial data. Let me give you an example. So if you have some kind of disaster handling system, maybe the first responders should have access to, personal data, because they have to know where elderly people live so that they can, rescue them from their houses or whatever. So they have to have access to individuals and to sensitive data about personal data about, like, I don't know, elderly people or personal individuals, and maybe some others who deal with, cleaning up the roads, they don't care about and they shouldn't have access. to individuals and to individual data like names or addresses of those people. They just have to see on the map, like, okay, where are the, fallen trees or whatever. I'm just making this up. But this is maybe a good example so that you know that in the system you will still store important data, but to whom you show which type of data, it does matter. And then limitations and transparency is the third thing, which is usually mentioned as a specialty, kind of specialty in case of GIS. Transparency in the purpose of processing, like for what purpose you are collecting and storing certain pieces of data in your system, and whom do you expose it, whom do you show this piece of data. Once again, this is more about compliance, and you can think about GDPR as one of the, again, important governance in this domain. It uses these terms of like transparency. You have to name what is the purpose, why you are storing certain or collecting and then storing certain pieces of data in your systems. But to have a secure system, a secure GIS or any other system, you need requirements. And with this slide, we arrived to the core set of requirements, actually, when it comes to security of basically any kind of system. And obviously, GIS is no different. If you think about requirements, like what would be the requirements under which we could call it a secure system? You can come up with many different. I even named some, like privacy, like, I don't know, I didn't name, but let's say dependability, reliability, resilience, robustness. You have many different requirements you may have, which you feel like these requirements should have to do something with security. But the good thing is that when it comes to IT systems in general, we only have 3 types of requirements. All the rest of the requirements, even those I named, can be somehow categorized into these 3 categories. And this is the so-called triad of IT security requirements called the CIA triad. It's easy to remember it. It has nothing to do with the American Secret Service, but it's just the acronym of the 3 core requirements that really make up the whole universe of IT security. And this is confidentiality, integrity, and availability, C, I, and A. Let's talk a little bit more about these 3 requirements, because really this is at the core of data security, as well as I said, IT security in general. Confidentiality. I mean, we obviously understand the word, right? Confidentiality means to, keep your data confidential. But let's have a more formal formulation, more formal definition of confidentiality. Confidentiality means that only authorized entities, people or other systems components, only authorized entities should access the data. But what kind of access we are talking about here? Reading, learning the information. So reading out the information, learning certain stored data. So it's all about getting knowledge about it. So only authorized entities can read and understand and access the data to read it out. If it gets broken, that's the middle column, the threat associated to this requirement. So the requirement is confidentiality. If it is broken, if somebody hacks the system for this purpose to steal your data and learn the data you store in the system, breaking, for example, privacy, it's called information disclosure or information leakage or information exposure. There are several ways how we like to call it, but the idea is that the information leaks out why this shouldn't. Then the I, integrity. Now, this is a little bit harder to imagine because it's not a commonly used English word. Like we use usually confidentiality, we know it. But integrity, it's a rare word, maybe a more rare word than confidentiality. What it is all about? It is basically very similar. It has a very similar definition to confidentiality. Integrity means only authorized entities can access the data. For which purpose? To write, to modify the data. So confidentiality is about reading the data. Integrity is about modification of the data. You have some people who can modify your data, and you have some others who should not be able to. Obviously, most of the people are in this second group. Nobody should modify the data you store in your system except those whom you allow it to. So that's integrity. Integrity of a data means that the data has not been tampered. So that's what the threat is. So I already named the threat. Tampering means that the malicious person modifies your data. So you protect against tampering by making the malicious person incapable of modifying your data, or at least detect that they did it. And then availability. Now, the third letter, the A from the CIA. Availability is the third type of requirement. It's not easy to have such a simple formulation about this requirement. I would say that in first two cases, only authorized entities can read, see the data, as well as only authorized entities can modify your data. And then availability is about those who can. They not only can, it's not only a possibility, like, okay, we may or may not access the data for read and write. If they can, they should be able to. So data should be there. The feature of the system should be up and running. If the feature of the system is broken, the system doesn't work, then we have an availability problem. So again, availability is a common word in English. So availability means that the system works as intended all the time. It's available. Whenever you need the system, it's there. It's not down, it's not broken, it's not crashed or whatever. If this gets broken, if we have a threat, the threat is called denial of service. So denial of service is the threat against availability, and it basically means one single thing from security point of view. The attacker hacked your system to crash it, to stop it, to stop providing its services to others. So that's the third category of threat of requirements that we may have. And in this, you may have certain specific requirements, right? Reliability, dependability, resilience, robustness. They are all connected. They are connected to the availability issue. And then it's basically all about the design of the system. So when we talk about the third column, the standard controls, it's more like what you need to build into your systems to protect your data and protect your functionality against malicious attacks. But it's the job, mainly from this point of view on a very high level, is the job of the architects to come up with the design of the system which has built-in protection techniques. And of course, another question is like how the system is implemented, but we will not go into more details here. Just to give you some examples of these controls, of these solutions that you can build into your systems to have a secure system against confidentiality. So what do you do to hide your data? You can have an access control. I talked about that already on the previous slide. Or you can encrypt the data, which is cryptography. That's hard stuff. That's mathematics. But you may know there is such a cryptographic operation like encryption, with which you hide the information stored in a piece of data. And that's what we usually do on the internet these days. So encryption is for data in motion. Access control can be used more for data at rest. So for a database, for a file system, you can encrypt that, or you can put access control on that. You cannot put access control in this sense to the internet, but still you can encrypt whatever you communicate through the internet. And then with this, you protect the confidentiality, because whatever is encrypted, nobody will be able to, and not nobody. Those people who do not have the decryption key will not be able to read that piece of data out, which basically is what confidentiality is all about. And then integrity, similarly, you can have access control as well as you can digitally sign pieces of data, because digital signature ensures that on the recipient side, once you receive a piece of data, you can decide whether it has been tampered with or not. Because if somebody changed the data, digital signature would be broken and you could detect that this occurred. And then, of course, for availability, I don't want to go into more details. They are high availability design, redundancy, and so on and so on. So this is really the big picture about GIS security as well as IT security in general. And as I promised you in the second part of my talk, I will have a short excursion towards information exposure, which obviously is connected to confidentiality, because it's all about like how to protect, how not to reveal information to those entities you don't want to reveal the information to, either because of the compliance, either because it's sensitive data. So it's all about information exposure as a kind of the most important threat against or related to confidentiality. The funny thing is that information exposure can actually be intentional or unintentional. Like, you may now ask yourself, like, who on earth would intentionally expose an information? Well, anyone who doesn't know that that piece of information is sensitive. You may sometimes put some data somewhere, forgetting about the fact that this is something that you shouldn't, publish, but you publish it by mistake, but still intentionally, right? So to start with the basics, data exposure can be intentional or unintentional to a non-authorized entity. As I said, the non-authorized entity can be public, and then you disclose by mistake something to the public which shouldn't be public, or to a person who is not super public, but still a person who does not have permission to see that data. I shouldn't have permission to see that piece of data. But basically, what hurts in this domain is when we publish this way, we expose, we leak out sensitive data. But what is sensitive data? That is also an interesting question, because piece of data can be sensitive from the product's functionality point of view, which basically means position of somebody in GIS, but also name, email address, even IP address on the internet, or when it comes to specific system, the salary of somebody in a payroll system, or a healthcare record of a patient in a healthcare system. So these are all functionality related sensitive things. But we can also have some generic sensitive things, as I said, related to privacy. The name, the email address of somebody is, again, something which GDPR, for example, penalizes if you just publish email addresses over users, again, either intentionally or unintentionally. If they hack your system and steal this, it's as bad as, whatever happened. If it gets public, that's bad for you. Generally, we call this PII, personally identifiable information. So this generic set of things, as I said, email address, social security number, passport numbers, ID numbers, all kinds of personal data. The other type of sensitive data, which also hurts if compromised, if published, if exposed, is system information. Your internal operation of the system, internal IP addresses, internal API endpoints, technical details about your network, how your network is constructed, how your database structure looks like, and so on and so on. So this is system information. If leaks out, it doesn't break any kind of privacy or GDPR, because these are technical details about your system. But why does this still hurt? Because it paves the way for the attacks. The most important information for an attacker is this: how to proceed with the attack, what would be the next step, because the attack is a very complex thing, and basically attacker is always constrained in knowing how your system works, and this way they can learn a lot about how your system is designed, how it works, how it has been implemented, so that they can step on or accomplish a successful attack. So these are the sensitive data you have to protect and not expose. How exposure can happen: either directly, you just put it in a log file and they see the log file. You just put it in some place, forgetting about the fact that the place is public, and they will see it. So that would be direct leakage. And more sophisticated case is when you say, no, I'm not leaking this information out, but still you leak out small pieces about this information here and there. Just to give you a very dumb example here, like credit card numbers. You don't put credit card numbers on the screen these days, right? But if what you usually do is that you put the last 4 digits of credit card number somewhere. But what if another system puts the first 4 digits? And what if yet another system puts to the screen the second block of 4 digits? Then somebody will observe the system here and all over and put together a complex information like a credit card number from small pieces. This is what we mean by aggregation of data, possibly public data, for which you may say, well, we don't care, that doesn't reveal anything, right? And even more tricky side channel attacks, but I really don't want to go into details here. That would be the highest level of like aggregation based on like measuring some physical things, like how quickly the system responds, and based on that, putting together the big picture once again. But let's skip this part. We could talk about like 3 hours just about side channel attacks. It's a very interesting set of topics, but we need to go on. This is a case study. The case study is, okay, just spotted the chat. Let me just open the chat. Okay. Yeah, GDPR regulation. I will dig that somewhere and put you. But I think if you just Google for GDPR regulation, you will be easy. It would be easy for you to download it. So this case study is about the Strava fitness application with lots of takeaways. A couple of years ago, Strava fitness application was really hit badly, not by attacks, but by ethical hacking, which means that some guys, for the good purpose, have revealed that there are certain weaknesses related to the Strava application, how it shows you geospatial data and how it aggregates geospatial data. And the Strava fitness application, so there are 2 problems. There were 2 problems related to Strava operation and privacy, as well as information exposure. And it's extremely important, interesting case study because it's pretty much in the context of GIS. So basically, one feature of Strava was, back then, still is, that it aggregates data on the map of, like, if you know Strava application, it's a fitness application. It collects data about your activities, and then you can then post on Facebook or wherever you like, hey, I ran today 5 miles or 10 miles or whatever. It was anonymized, of course, but it was possible for somebody to take a look at the world map and zoom in into the world map and see, okay, let's say Central Park, New York, what are the common routes people run in that park, or in any other forest, anywhere else in an area. You zoom into an area and you see nicely, as you can see here, like the common roads people like to run in that area. So far, so good. But then somebody had the brilliant idea, what if we zoom into Afghanistan? And back then, international troops were still in Afghanistan. And basically, in Afghanistan, it's a very sparsely populated country. And basically, it was really flashing, like, hey, you have a military base here, right? So nobody thought about the fact that basically when we start collecting data about fitness, daily routine, like daily run routes, and you start showing that on the map, even if it is anonymized and you don't know if it is John Smith or anybody else or Private Brian, we know there are people running on a regular basis in this area. And why this was a problem, because basically it revealed black and white the position, even as you can see the internal map of the military bases. This is specifically the Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan, at least it was back then. Why this happened? Of course, you could switch off this feature so that Strava doesn't collect data about you in this way. And I think it even was a policy for the US soldiers, but it was an international, operation going on there. And as far as I remember, it was Canadian, German, Norwegian, things like this, soldiers who didn't have the policy to switch off this. And actually Strava kept collecting all this data. They show it on the map, and somebody could quite easily see where are and how these military bases look like. So it's all about the default behavior and the default settings. But there is an even worse story about Strava, and it was about the fact that one could even de-anonymize this whole database. Why and how? To be honest, it was a very daring functionality and feature of Strava, but they said if you are running, you as one of the users, if you are running in a certain area on a daily basis, Strava was willing to show you the names, actually, which is pretty obviously de-anonymization, the names of other people who ran in the same area as you do, saying like, hey, you know your neighbors, right? They're not, they are not strangers. Yeah, but what they forgot about is that one could modify a little bit their Android or iOS phones. They tampered with the phone, the operating system, modifying a little bit the APIs. And basically, somebody has demonstrated that when they started to feed into the mobile, to the Strava application, basically fake GPS data, it was not your real position, but you fed in maliciously to this mobile application of yours. You hacked your own mobile phone to modify your own GPS coordinates. All of a sudden, you started to see anyone everywhere in the world, because you fake your GPS data to be, let's say, in the aforementioned area of the Central Park in New York, and all of a sudden you started to see who is running in that area. So that was another problem, that you could even de-anonymize this through the activity search by tampering with your, modifying your mobile phone and faking your own GPS data. So GPS data's integrity was broken in this sense here, just to refer back to the CIA triad once again. And of course, Strava did modify their application. First of all, setting to default no all data collection, which was critical and which was sensitive in this manner. So basically, I would say it was daring. The de-anonymization was daring already from the point of view of Strava, but the other mistake, which was clearly a mistake of the Strava developers or Strava as a company, is that they have chosen the default value of these settings to be allowing, right? So they did have, so it was not that bad. They did have a setting for like switching off all these kinds of things about being collected about you, but the default was on, because it's a fancy feature. It's a fancy feature from the usage point of view, but it's not really a fancy feature from security point of view, even furthermore from privacy point of view, obviously. And time is running up, so we still have a couple of minutes to have a short wrap up. This was only the time given for me to make you a little bit more paranoid about all this data you handle in your systems. Nevertheless, let's have a very quick wrap up. And basically, I thought to have a quick wrap up in form of 8 principles of security, how to build a secure system, GIS or not. And the interesting thing about this collection of principles is that they have been laid down nearly 50 years ago. So Saltzer and Schroeder are the two authors of this scientific work, dating back to 1975. It was really 50 years ago, nearly 50 years ago. But still today, after 50 years, what they collected as a collection of 8 principles of secure systems is still absolutely and super valid these days. So let me just have one single sentence about all of them. Again, we could talk just about this slide for 3 hours once again, but I need to conclude. First principle is the economy of mechanism. It's all about the principle of KISS, if you know that, what that is. Keep it simple and straightforward, or whatever. It's all about you should always formulate your system in the simplest possible way. Don't overcomplicate things, because more complication always means less security and more maintenance and more trouble. That's the first one. Second one, fail-safe default. Think about the Strava and what I said. Your default behavior from security point of view should always be to deny. It's like in the Wild West. First you shoot and then you ask. Then you find a good reason not to deny some things. But by default, everything should be denied. That's the good approach from security point of view. You should only allow things if you find a good reason to do so. Principle of complete mediation, check everything right away before you use it. Don't just check things on the boundary of the system. Check things inside the system. Whenever you use a piece of data, check its integrity, check its validity, check the authority, and so on and so on. So check all the things before you touch a piece of data. Open design. Don't hide how you are doing it. Don't rely your security on the fact of, like, you know, like what kind of encryption algorithm you may be using. That shouldn't be a secret. That you should be open. That should be in the user's manual. Like, yeah, we are using RSA, we are using AES or elliptic curve cryptography, whatever. That should never be a secret. You do have to have secrets, but the secret is always data and not the algorithm, not the procedures. You should always do war. You should, okay, let's not use war as an example, but playing chess, you should play chess assuming that the opponent knows what will be your next move. They will know it, even if you try to hide it. If you play a chess with somebody who is good, they will know your next move maybe earlier than you. Separation of privilege. Break down your system to small parts, because then you can handle the security of those small parts. And then apply the least privilege for each and every of these individual parts. Give them only the privileges they absolutely need and nothing else. Because if they hack this component, you will unnecessarily have more severe consequences, right? I talked about this already. Least common principle of least common mechanisms. Build a system where you keep apart the dominoes. Why? Once again, if they hack this part of the system, this part of the system will still be up and running, right? If you put the dominoes too close and you have a system which is interconnected in millions of different ways, somebody kicks the first domino and all the dominoes are gone. If you keep the dominoes apart, even if some of the dominoes fails, all the rest falls down, all the rest will be up and running, and that's a more robust system. And the last one, and it's maybe one of the most important ones, never, psychological acceptability, never, ever forget about the fact that your users are human beings. They cannot take anything. If you complicate your security solutions too much, and this is also true for features of yours, user experience, you know. So if you complicate things too much, they will say, this system is complicated. I don't use it. I don't like this system. And they will turn away your system, or they will find their way through and they will figure out how to circumvent your protection techniques so that they can use your systems in an easy way. So again, this is also keep it simple, but keep it simple from usability point of view. And this is pretty much connected to security as well. So with this, I would like to thank you for your attention. This is the end of my part. I hope that it was at least a little bit eye-opening and opening your eyes towards security considerations. I hope that I was able to make you at least a little bit more paranoid. So thank you once again. If there are any questions, I will be happy to answer them. Now we will have a break, and during the break, I will not leave the teams the meeting. I will try to find the link to the GDPR regulation so that you can download it. It's super public. I mean, you should be able to find it by Google. That's what I will do. I will just find the appropriate source and I will drop that into the chat. Let me check if there are any other questions. No, but if you have any other questions, shoot, please. If there are no questions, so would be geoprocessing history of the metadata with the locations when shared with external clients be a security list? Well, it all depends on who these clients are. So there is no generic answer of yes or no to this question because it all depends on the nature of the client. So if the client, again, think about the need to know basis. Does the client needs to know this? Is this part of the normal feature? Still, I would be very cautious in showing them any kind of sensitive data like PII, so personally identifiable information, even after the events are done. So about past events, I would be very, very careful with that. So for that one, I would say no. So geoprocessing history, again, need to know basis, and it all depends on the nature of the client. So again, to summarize, need to know basis. If they need to have this and it's justifiable, then it's okay. But again, from compliance point of view, it's another question like, have you informed any possibly involved individuals that the data will be shared in this manner? So this has also legal aspects. So answering the questions. Yeah, for some things this occurs by default, but something occurring by default again is it's a good question. Like the fact that it occurs by default, is this something you need, or is that something you want to have? So to answer this question, we must most probably have to set up a project where we analyze, the exact data, pieces of data, what's involved in that data, what's not. Is there any PII inside? We should also take a look at GDPR or other laws to see whether the whole environment is also covered from legal point of view. Unfortunately, here, legal aspects and technical aspects go hand in hand. Okay, so I would like to now announce a break. First of all, once again, thank you for your attention. A break of 15 minutes. During the break, I will put into the chat a link to GDPR. So let's have a break, and then I will hand over the presentation rights to Gabor, and he will continue. Okay, so see you in 15 minutes.
All right, then let's start the workshop. Hello and good morning for everyone. First, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Gabor Shimoni, and I've been working in GIS for more than 20 years. In this last session, I will do the presentation. Just a few seconds. About today's topics. Here you can see the schedules and the topics for today. There will be two parts. In the first part, I will speak about remote sensing and IoT data. The IoT is the abbreviation for Internet of Things. I will introduce the basics and the basic components of the remote sensing and the possible usage in ArcGIS environment. In the second part, I will show how can we automate geoprocesses in ArcGIS environment. I will explain what is a geoprocessing and how can we use the geoprocessing tools. What is ArcToolbox and how can we batch a process. I will make a simple model with the ModelBuilder, and on the end, I will speak a few words about the Python scripts too. Because the presentation will take about 19 minutes, I think there is no need to make a break between the presentations. If you have a questions, please use the chat and we will try to answer after the presentation. All right, let's continue with remote sensing. So what is remote sensing? According to US Geological Survey, the remote sensing is the process of detecting and monitoring the physical characteristics of an area by measuring its reflected and emitted radiation at a distance. It's typical from satellite, aircraft, or drone platform. Remote sensing refers to acquisition of information about an object or phenomenon without physically being in contact with it. This is done through the use of sensors that capture the data from distance, such as satellite image or aerial photograph, and is collected by a satellite, an aircraft, or a drone platform. Remote sensing data can provide valuable insights into various environmental, such as climate changes, urban planning, land use, natural resource, and disaster management. In recent years, the field of Earth remote sensing has exploded with the development of new satellite technologies and the availability of vast amounts of high-resolution imagery. With the rapid advancement in satellite technology, Earth remote sensing has become an essential tool for a wide range of applications, for environmental monitoring to disaster management. However, the vast amount of data generated by these satellites can be overwhelming for many who lack the necessary skills and tools to process and analyze them. All right, now I will introduce the basic components of the remote sensing. The first is the type of the remote sensing. There are two types of remote sensing, the passive and active sensor. The passive sensors measure reflected light emitted from the sun. When sunlight reflects off the Earth's surface, passive sensors capture that light. Passive sensors can only be used to detect energy when the natural occurring energy is available. For all reflected energy, this can only take place during the time when the sun is illuminating the Earth. There is no reflected energy available from the sun at night. Energy that is naturally emitted, such as thermal infrared, can be detected day or night as long as the amount of energy is large enough to be recorded. These sensors measure land and sea surface temperatures, vegetation properties, cloud and aerosol properties, and other physical attributes. The majority of passive sensors cannot penetrate dense cloud cover and thus have limitation of service area like the tropics where dense cloud cover is frequent. The second type of remote sensing is the active sensors, and the active sensors provide their own energy source for illumination. The sensor emits radiation which is directed toward the target to be investigated. The radiation reflected from that target is detected and measured by the sensor. Advantages for active sensor include the ability to obtain measurements anytime, regardless of the time of day or season. However, active systems require generally a fairly large amount of energy to adequately illuminate targets. These types of sensors are useful for measuring the vertical profiles of aerosols, forest structure, precipitation, and wind, sea surface topography, ice, and other. The next component of remote sensing are the platforms. The base on which remote sensors are placed to acquire information about the Earth's surface is called platform. Platforms are nothing but vehicles or carriers of remote sensing which carries sensors and other components required for remote sensing. The types of platforms depend upon the needs as well as constraints of the observation mission. There are mainly three types of platform used in remote sensing. First one is a spaceborne, the second is airborne, the third is ground-based. In spaceborne platforms, sensors are mounted on spacecraft or satellite orbiting the Earth. It can acquire imagery of the entire Earth. As height of the platform increase, coverage area also increase, but image quality might decrease. Airborne platforms are primarily stay-moving aircraft, although helicopters and balloons are occasionally used. The advantages of using aircraft are high resolution imagery and the possibility of carrying LiDAR sensors, but the disadvantage is a small coverage extent. In ground-based platform, the sensor may be placed on a tripod, ladder, scaffold, tall building, or a crane. But nowadays, the UAVs are mostly used for this purpose. The advantages of using UAVs are very high resolution imagery and the possibility of carrying LiDAR sensors too. But the disadvantage is a very, very small coverage of extent. In this slide, the slide shows the major remote sensing technologies and their typical altitudes. Ground-based sensors operate at near surface to about 100 meters. Airborne sensors operate from 300 meters to about 12 kilometers high. Spaceborne platforms operate at 180 kilometers and above high. The next component is the image resolution. Image resolution is the details that an image holds. High resolution means more detailed image. Remote sensing divides image resolutions into three different types: spatial resolution, spectral resolution, and temporal resolution. Let's start with the spatial resolution. A spatial resolution is the details held by pixels of an image. It represented by a value of pixel. For example, a spatial resolution of 13 meters means that one pixel covers 13 meters times 13 meters of area on the ground. High spatial resolution means more detailed image with smaller pixel size, whereas lower spatial resolution means less detailed image with larger size. In this slide, we have three images with different resolution. It's, I think, the part of Jamaica. And on the left side, the picture has the spatial resolution of 13 meters. The next picture, we have spatial resolution 60 meters. And on the right side, we have spatial resolution with 90 meters. As the pixels, as you can see, as the pixel size increase, the resolution decrease. These images are from Landsat 8 satellite image. All right, let's continue. The next one is the spectral resolution. The spectral resolution of an image is determined by the sensor and refers to the following: the number of bands of the electromagnetic spectrum sensed by the sensor, the wavelength of the bands, and the width of the bands. Spectral resolution refers to the ability of a sensor to measure specific wavelength and the width of the electromagnetic spectrum. This refers to the number of bands and the width of the band in the spectrum. Thinner the spectral resolution, narrower the width of the band. Multispectral imagery has from 3 to 10 bands, which are wider, while hyperspectral imagery has more than 100 numbers of bands, which are much narrower. So it gives more detailed image in comparison to multispectral imagery. In this slide, we can see the red, green, and blue bands of satellite multispectral imagery captured by Landsat 8. The third one is the temporal resolution. The temporal resolution is determined primarily by the platform. On satellite platform, the temporal resolution is the time it takes for satellite to complete an orbit and revisit the same observation area. The higher the temporal resolution, the shorter the distance of time between the acquisition of images. This resolution depends on the orbit, the sensor's characteristics, and the swath width. The path followed by a satellite is referred to as its orbit. Satellite orbits are matched to the capability and objective of the sensors they carry. Orbit selection can vary in terms of altitude and their orientation and rotation relative to the Earth. Satellites at very high altitudes, which view the same portion of the Earth's surface at all times, have geosynchronous orbits. A satellite in geosynchronous orbit directly over the equator will have a geostationary orbit. These geosynchronous satellites at latitudes at least 36,000 kilometers revolve at speed which match the rotation of the Earth, so they seem stationary relative to the Earth's surface. This allows the satellites to observe and collect information continuously over specific areas. Because geostationary satellites match the rate at which Earth is rotating, they can have very high temporal resolution capable of capturing photos of the same area every 50 minutes. Weather and communication satellites are usually of these types. Many remote sensing platforms are designed to follow an orbit which, in conjunction with Earth's rotation, allows them to cover most of the Earth's surface over a certain period of time. These are polar orbits. Many of these satellite orbits are also sun-synchronous, such they cover each area of the world at a constant local time of day called local sun time. At given latitude, the position of the sun in the sky as the satellite passes overhead will be the same within the same season. This ensures consistent illumination conditions when acquiring images in a specific season over succeeding years or over a particular area a series of days. This is an important factor for monitoring changes between images or for mosaicing adjacent images together, as they do not have to be corrected for different illumination conditions. Polar orbiting satellites have a temporal resolution that can vary from 1 day to 16 days. Airborne platforms usually offer higher temporal resolution because airborne platforms can flown at any time of day or night. The second, the next thing is the electromagnetic spectrum. The electromagnetic spectrum represents the continuum of electromagnetic radiation arranged on the basis of wavelengths or frequency. Electromagnetic spectrum ranges from shorter wavelengths to the longer wavelengths. The shorter wavelengths are gamma rays to X-rays, and the longer wavelengths are microwave and radio waves. Most common remote sensing system operates in one or several of the visible, infrared, and microwave portions of the electromagnetic spectrum. Visible light sits in the middle of that range. The light which our eyes can detect is part of the visible spectrum. Blue, green, and red are the primary colors or wavelengths of the visible spectrum. There are other forms of electromagnetic energy which is invisible to our eyes, for example, ultraviolet, infrared, or microwave vision, but can be detected by remote sensing sensors. Let's talk about spectral bands. Spectral bands are a group of wavelengths. For example, ultraviolet, visible, near-infrared, thermal infrared, and microwave are spectral bands. We categorize each spectral region based on its frequency and wavelength. There are two types of imagery for passive sensors. There are multispectral imagery and hyperspectral imagery. The main difference between multispectral and hyperspectral is the number of bands and how narrow the bands are. The multispectral imagery generally refers from 3 to 10 wider bands, but the hyperspectral imagery has much narrower bands and can have hundreds and thousands of bands. The next slide is about the image classification. The image classification is the process of assigning land cover classes to image pixels. There are three main types of image classification techniques: unsupervised image classification, supervised image classification, and object-based image classification. Unsupervised and supervised image classifications are the two most common approaches, and when we have a low spatial resolution image, they perform well. Object-based image analysis perform well in these conditions too. However, when we have a high spatial resolution image, then object-based classification is much better. A detailed description of this technique is beyond the scope of this presentation. And let's see the application of remote sensing. There are hundreds of applications of remote sensing, from weather forecast to GPS. In space, we have many satellites, and we have a lot of remote sensing there. A few examples. For example, in agriculture, we can use remote sensing to crop detection and classification, crop health analysis, compliance mapping, and yield estimation. In navigation with the global position system, we can always find our position in the Earth. In transportation, we use the remote sensing for updating road maps or to visualize asphalt conditions. In water resources, we can wetland mapping, soil moisture estimation, flood mapping and monitoring, drainage-based modeling, catchment, land use, and land cover. There are many more applications, but we have no time to mention all existing. ArcGIS provides a user-friendly platform for managing, processing, analyzing, and visualizing remote sensing data. The software can also be used to pre-process and enhance remote sensing data, such as applied image enhancement, filtering, mosaicing, and clipping. In addition, ArcGIS can be used to perform a range of spatial analysis tasks on remote sensing data, including land cover classification, change detection, and spatial modeling. ArcGIS also provides tools for visualizing remote sensing data in 2 and 3 dimensions, such as creating fly-through animations of 3-dimensional terrain models. There are tools for automapping, stereo mapping to perform multi-dimensional analysis, and what is more important, there is a georeferencer tool also. We can add remote sensing data directly to a map document with the add tool. It's here. From the Arc map document or from Arc catalog. First, we have to click on the plus sign at data and navigate to the drive and the folder containing the remote sensing files. Then we have to choose the files that we wish to add to the map. Click the add button. I use the data here in my example from Jamaica National Repository Database. The Jamaica All Island is in orthophoto mosaic image dataset, while the DEM Jamaica is a digital elevation model, which is a digital representation of ground surface topology or terrain. The digital elevation model is in image format, in TIFF format. If we add these data to ArcGIS, the files will appear in the table of contents and in the map window too. The aerial photos use red, green, and blue bands to display natural colors, while digital elevation models are usually displayed as a stretch gray scale. The distance symbology can be changed. It's not necessary to change the aerial photo, but the digital elevation model we can present with the better symbology. Changing the symbology in digital model can be done in the Layer Properties dialog box in the Symbology tab. You can see the types of symbology for raster files. There are unique values, classified, stretch, and discrete color. By default, the digital elevation model is stretched. It's because in most cases, raster datasets represent gradients of value, not a distinctive values. We can change the color from grayscale to different colors by clicking on the down arrow next to the color ramp. For this dataset, I choose elevation colorization with the brown and the white representing high elevation and blue for lower elevation. The result we can see in this slide. We can add many remote sensing data, for example, Landsat imagery dataset with the help of the ArcGIS online tool. In the search box, let's type Landsat and then click on the magnifying glass. Below the figure, within each description, you have two options, details and add. If we click on details, we get a description of data, and if we click on add, then then the online map document from ArcGIS online platform will open in ArcMap window. In this slide, we can see the result if we add Landsat imagery to the ArcGIS. In my example, I add the Landsat A normalized difference vegetation index, the NDVI, which is colorized. On the end of remote sensing, for analyze and process of remote sensing data, there are many tools and functions in ArcGIS. The image analysis, which is in the left side of the slide, image analysis offers a suite of basic tools for performing processing and analysis techniques to single or multiple, depending upon the operations, images, and raster datasets. The image analysis window is divided in 5 key areas: the layers list, display, processing, options, and mensuration. Select an image or multiple images in the layer list, and depending on what we have selected, items will become active in the processing area of the form. For example, the NDVI tool is active when you have an image selected with a red and near infrared band. Each result is added to the layer list, but the result is temporary. Result must be exported to become a permanent file. The advantages to this approach is that the user does not have to manage a vast collection of intermediate files while arriving at an optimal result. The next two tools is the raster. These are ArcToolboxes. One is the raster, next is the spatial analyze tool. With these tools, we can do almost everything to make a raster analyze in our GIS. That's for all about remote sensing, and let's go to IoT, or Internet of Things. In our world, we are surrounded by smart devices. Take a range from simple smart home devices to complex industrial machinery and transportation systems. The smart home devices we use every day can be everything. We have smart lights, smart locks, smart cameras, smart refrigerators, even smart cars. There are billions and real billions of them around us. Each smart device has one or more real-time sensors. If we connect billions of these sensors from around the world, we'll get the Internet of Things. Because they are all connected, it enables the exchange of information between them. Internet of Things is a connected world of moving sensors, stationary meters, or even social media feeds. These stream layers exist in the cloud providers like Azure, Amazon, or Cisco. The Internet of Tools can perform a variety of tasks autonomously, like monitoring environmental conditions in farms, to managing traffic patterns with smart cars and other smart automotive devices, to controlling machineries and processes in factories, and to track inventories and shipments in warehouses. The definition of Internet of Things from Wikipedia is: the Internet of Things describes devices with sensors, processing ability, software, and other technologies that connect and exchange data with other devices and systems over the internet or other communication network. The connection between the Internet of Things and the GIS is the location. Most devices combine their physical location from a GPS receiver, giving real-time sensor information and positioning. It's really this geographic context from the Internet of Things that the geospatial industry has embraced. With this real-time data, we can perform real-time analysis. With GIS data, we can do real-time spatial analysis. Real-time analytics is useful when we want to interpret real-time observational data and take some action. In Esri's ecosystem, there are two IoT softwares currently available. One is ArcGIS GeoEven Server, and the second is ArcGIS Velocity. I'm not completely familiar with these softwares, but upon Esri's website, the ArcGIS GeoEven Server connects and monitors real-time feeds and IoT data. We can connect to all kinds of data streams, including GPS devices in vehicles, mobile devices, and social media providers. GeoEven Server enables real-time event-based data streams to be integrated as data sources in your enterprise GIS. Event data can be filtered, processed, and sent to multiple destinations, allowing you to connect with virtually any type of streaming data and automatically alert personnel when specified conditions occur or in real time. In what scenarios can be used? In real-time data ingestion, applying real-time analytics, visualization real-time data, and real-time alerting and notification. The second software is ArcGIS Velocity, and the ArcGIS Velocity is a cloud platform for scalable real-time and big data analytics. This software works in ArcGIS online platform. I think this is the end of the first part, and I will now switch to the second part. Just a few seconds. It's here. All right. The second part is developing custom tools in ArcGIS environment. First, let's talk about geoprocessing. There are a number of different functions you can perform.
Gabor, sorry, we see the Internet of Things.
Yes.
Right. Yes.
Just a second, please.
Change something.
Yes.
Ah, it was okay. Internet of Things again.
Or this one.
Internet of Things again.
Okay.
This is a slide about Internet of Things.
All right. Can I continue?
Yes, if you would like to continue from Internet of Things, then yes, because we see a slide with the title of the Internet of Things. And I think you're by the next slide.
All right. All right, and I will change. All right. Then I will change, yes. Now it's all right.
This is a theoretical workshop 3, developing
Yes.
custom tools.
Developing custom tools, yes.
Okay, then it's okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry. All right, let's continue. All right. Let's continue with geoprocessing. There are a number of different functions you can perform on a map layer, either based on location or attribute value that result in a new map layers. In ArcGIS, these are called geoprocessing functions. According to the online GIS dictionary, a geoprocess is a GIS operation used to manipulate data. A geoprocess implies creating new data based on existing data. In general, this happens in the following circumstances. When data is copied, imported, or added from one source to another source, for example, a database, during data conversion, for example, loading data in features from CAT files, or when analyzing data that is combining features and attributes for one or more dataset to create a new dataset. Geoprocessing provides tools for converting, managing, and analyzing GIS data. Geoprocessing tools are available in applications across the ArcGIS platform. It's important to choose the right geoprocessing tool for the right job and to understand how to set the correct tool parameters. When we use geoprocessing tools, most of them will create a new data. This means that even if we choose the wrong tool or use a bad settings in the tool, our original data is protected in most cases. This provides a level of protection and helps to put our mind at ease knowing that the chance of damaging our data by doing the wrong thing is greatly decreased. Geoprocessing is widely used to automate repetitive tasks. For example, load many files into the geodatabase, to integrate data. For example, join data to create a single complex layer, or as a part of a quality assurance workflow, for example, find all buildings that overlap, or to create a process or model. The most common geoprocessing tools can be accessed from the geoprocessing menu here in ArcGIS. These are the basic geoprocessing tools and are used most in GIS. This is the buffer tool, clip, intersect, union, merge, and dissolve. Let's see them one by one. The buffer. Buffer is a proximity function, and it creates a new polygon layer around the input layer based on a specified distance. The buffer distance can be single value or can be based on an attribute field in the attribute table of the features being buffered. We can buffer any feature type, points, line, or polygons, but the output feature type will always be a polygon. Each new polygon inherits the attribute values of elements that was buffered. They can be used to help determine if features in one layer are within a distance of another layer. Next geoprocessing tool is a clip. Clip cuts out an input layer to the extent of a defined feature boundary of another data. The result of this tool is a new clipped output layer. It can be used to clip points, lines, or polygons. However, the clipping layer must be always a polygon. Next geoprocessing tool is intersect. The intersect tool takes multiple input layers and returns a new layer that shows where the inputs overlap. The result layer attribute table will contain the combined attributes of all the inputs. This tool works with all feature types, points, lines, and polygons too. It's very similar to the clip tool because the extents of input features define the output. The only exception is that it preserves attributes from all the data sets that overlap each other in the output. Next geoprocessing tool is the union. The union tool takes the input of multiple polygon layers and combines all the information into a single feature class that contains all the data from the two or more input layers. The union tool maintains all input feature boundaries and attributes in the output feature class. It's important to remember this tool only works with polygons. It may not be used with points or lines. If we need to perform this type of analysis on points or lines features, we would need to use another tool, and that is identify tool. Next tool is the merge tool. The merge tool will take data from two or more layers or tables and combine them into a new single output. It can be used to combine points, lines, polygons, and even standalone tables. We can only merge like features, meaning we can only merge points with points, lines with lines, and polygons with polygons. The new layer will contain all the features and attributes which were originally in the separate input layers. The last geoprocessing tool is a dissolve. A dissolve creates a new layer in which all features in an input layer that have the same value for specified attribute are dissolved into a single feature. This tool is used to simplify or generalize a data layer based on a common attribute value. It works on points, lines, and polygons too. In other words, this will merge neighboring boundaries if the neighbors have the same attributes in the polygon feature class. Although each geoprocessing tool has its own functionality and settings, they all use the similar dialog box with some common elements. I will try to demonstrate how these geoprocessing tools work using the example of the buffer tool. As I mentioned before, it's a basic geoprocessing tool and can be accessed from the geoprocessing menu. Before we start a geoprocessing task, it is always useful to look at the geographics and attributes tables of each input feature class so we have a good idea of what we have to work with. From Geoprocessing menu, click on the buffer to open the dialog box. In the dialog box, in the on the upper left side is the name of the tool. In this case, it's a buffer. On the left are the tool parameters. And if the show help button in the lower right corner, somewhere here, I will just annotate to see it. Yes. So the name is here in the upper left side. In the left side, we have the parameters. And if the show help button is on, it's here, is on, then we can see the help panel. For detailed help, we can click the tool help button, and the ArcGIS help will appear with detailed information about this tool. The content of the help panel is basically the overview help of the tool, but if we click in the parameter box, then we will get help on individual parameters. The buffer tool requires that you select an input layer of features to buffer, a location where the newly created layer will be saved on disk, and the distance value. The tool immediately validates the input parameters. The required parameters that don't have a value have a green circle to their left from the parameter name. Invalid values have a red cross, and the warnings have a yellow triangle. For the first input, in the input feature class, you can either click on the down arrow or you can browse to it. Set the output feature class and the distance. Distance can be a value or field value from the feature class. All the other optional parameters we can leave with default values. Optional parameters do not have green circles to the left of the parameters tool. Make sure no features are selected. This is important because if we have selected features, the tools will process only the selected features. Then we have to click OK and wait for result. When the buffering process finishes, the resulting map appears in the maps table of content and in the map window. After that, we can close the buffer builder. The result we can see in this slide. It's useful and worth to spend some time with the identified tool looking at the resulting feature and their attributes. Here we can see that there is a polygon around each line at a distance of 75 meters because we set the buffer length to 75 meters. There are 18 objects in all. The polygons are overlapping and are not connected. Basically, all the geoprocessing tools work the same way. Add input layer, set the parameters and run the tools. There can be additional parameters that affect a tool's result, but they don't appear on a tool's dialog box. These are the geoprocessing environmental settings. These values you set using environmental settings dialog box, and the tools retrieve and use them when they run. The environmental settings dialog box can be accessed by clicking on the environment button in the geoprocessing tools window. Changing environmental settings is often a precondition for performing geoprocessing tasks. For example, the output coordinate system environment setting, which defines the coordinate system map projection for new data. Only certain environments will be used by an individual tool, but tools use the environments in the same way. For example, all tools that use the output extend environment use it in the same way. They only process features in the output extend. Which are these environment settings? You can see in this slide. For example, the first one is the workspace. And under workspace, we can set the default location for geoprocessing tools inputs and outputs for current and scratch workspace. The output coordinates, we can set the geographic transformations and output coordinate system. The processing extend, the output extend environment setting defines what features or rasters will be processed by the tool. All right, now we will run again the buffer tool, but now from ArcToolbox and with a little bit different parameters. So let's see, what is ArcToolbox? ArcToolbox is a collection of geoprocessing tools for analyzing, editing, and converting data. Geoprocessing tasks are accomplished with geoprocessing tools. In ArcGIS, these tools are stored in ArcToolbox, which is accessible from ArcMap and ArcCatalog. Unlike ArcMap and ArcCatalog, which are standalone applications, ArcToolbox must be started from within one of these two applications. So how are the tools organized in ArcToolbox? In ArcToolbox, the toolbox contains the tool sets where we can find the individual tools. Geoprocessing tools are organized into toolboxes based on their functions in ArcToolbox. Some tools are available as part of the default ArcGIS installations, but not all. What determines which tools we can use? There are two things that determine what geoprocessing tools will be available in ArcGIS. The first is the licensing level. There are three different licensing levels: the basic, standard, and advanced. The basic level is the most limiting licensing level with the least amount of geoprocessing tools. With this level, we will be able to access simple analysis tools such as buffer, union, and intercept. but we will be not able to use tools to find the closest feature in another layer or that erase overlapping areas between two or more layers. The standard level includes a few more geoprocessing tools in addition to all the ones available at the basic level. Many of these are focused on data management and maintenance. The advanced license level has the greatest number of geoprocessing tools. It includes all the tools found in basic and standard licenses, plus additional analysis tools. The second thing that determines what geoprocessing tools will be available in ArcGIS is what extensions we have. The extensions are add-ons for the core ArcGIS product that provide extended functionality to all licensing levels. There are 6 basic extensions: the spatial analyst, three-dimensional analyst, network analyst, geostatical analyst, data reviewer, and workflow manager. What is important for us is first the spatial analyst. The spatial analyst extension is primarily used to perform spatial analysis using raster-based data. We can do analysis with a digital elevation model, calculate slopes, determine watersheds, perform hydrological analysis, classify images, and more. In these extensions, there are more than 170 geoprocessing tools. The three-dimensional analyst extension, with this extension, we can work and analyze three-dimensional data. It is designed to work primarily with three-dimensional vector data. We can work with many three-dimensional datasets, including triangulated irregular networks, LiDAR datasets, and standard data formats. In this extension, there are more than 100 geoprocessing tools. The network analysis extension, with the network analysis extension, has tools for creating and analyzing network datasets. We can calculate the best routes for vehicles, determine service areas based on drive time requirements, find the nearest feature along the network, and more. In this extension, there are about 20 geoprocessing tools. There are many more extensions, and each one has a focused area of increased functionality that includes additional geoprocessing tools. You can access tools directly from the ArcToolbox windows, but there are many tools, and if you don't know exactly where a tool is, you should use the search window instead. In this case, you know you want to use the buffer tool, but you don't know which tool it is in. So you will search for it with the search window. The search window can be activated from ArcMap. On the menu bar, click Geoprocessing, search for tools to find tools. The search window displays many system toolboxes. Each toolbox has tools for related geoprocessing tasks. All right, let's continue our work with the buffer geoprocessing tool. Start the buffer tool from ArcToolbox by double-clicking the hammer icon. fill the input features, the output feature class, and the distance parameters like before, but set one optional parameter, the dissolve type, to all. As you can see, because we clicked in the dissolve type parameter control, the content of the help window shows the help content for dissolve type parameter. Click OK, and when process is complete, the resulting map appears again in the maps table of content. If we look carefully at the new buffer layer and attribute layer, we can see that because of the given dissolve type parameter, only one polygon has been created. All the separate polygons have been merged into one. Let's talk about batch processing. Many geoprocessing workflows include running the same tool against a large number of datasets. For example, converting shapefiles into 5 database feature classes, or clipping a number of thematic layers to study area. To eliminate the repetition, each geoprocessing tool has a batch mode. In the batch mode, we can run the same tool functionality with many different inputs, and in some cases with different outputs too. In ArcMap, you can run the same geoprocessing tool against many datasets using batch processing. To use batch processing, right-click a tool in ArcToolbox and click Batch, which opens the Batch dialog box. For each input, you enter the tool parameters as a row in the Batch dialog box. You can enter parameters values by double-clicking row header. Each row in the batch grid represents a single geoprocess. To add another geoprocess, click the Add button to the plus sign. After you fill in all the parameters and click OK, the tool executes sequentially for all your inputs. Means batch grid rows are executed sequentially. In this example, here I created a buffer for the railway feature class for every 100 meter from 100 to 500 meters. After we run the batch process, the result will be 5 different polygons, each with the right buffer value. While batch processing does allows to perform the same task on multiple datasets as at the same time, it is still limited to only dealing with a single tool at a single time. All right, let's do an exercise to see how geoprocessing tools work. Suppose we work to an electrical utility company that plans where transmission lines will be built. To comply with environmental regulations, the transmission lines should be at least 1,000 meters from bed caves. Our task is to make a spreadsheet with all the bed caves which are within 1,000 meters from transmission lines. We use 2 input layers for this. The first input layer will be the position of the bad caves, and in this map it's with black white symbology, and the second input layer will be the transmission lines, and it's with red line symbology. I add one more layer, the digital elevation model, and it's just for only for background. For this task, we will use 3 geoprocessing tools. The first, we will buffer the transmission lines on 1000 meters. With the second tool, we will intersect the bad caves with transmission buffer. And in the third tool, we will make export the result as a spreadsheet. Let's make the first geoprocessing. From ArcToolbox, analyze to proximity, start the buffer tool. For input feature class, let's set transmission lines by clicking the down arrow or with browser. Set the output feature class, the distance to 100 meters, and the dissolve type to all. All the other options we can leave with default values. Once we have verified we have everything set correctly, we can click the OK button located at the bottom of the geoprocessing pane. When the buffer tool is complete, a new layer will be added to map named transmission line 100 meter buffer. The result is a polygon layer with red hash lines and red outline symbology. The second tool, we have to intersect the bad caves with transmission buffer layer. From ArcToolbox analyze tools overlay, let's start the intersect geoprocessing tool. Let's set the options in the input feature will be the beds and the transmission lines 100 meter, and the output feature class will be beds transformation buffer intersect. The result is a point layer with blue points. If we check the attribute table of this layer, we can see that there are 14 bed caves which are within 1000 meters from transmission lines. Now we just need to export the intersecting bed caves to Excel spreadsheet. From ArcToolbox conversion tool Excel, let's start the table to Excel tool. As you can see, the icon next to the tool is not a hammer like before, because this tool is actually a Python script. When the table to Excel tool is complete, it does not add the resulting Excel spreadsheet to map, but we can view the data in Microsoft Excel. So that's it. This is a method we can use the geoprocessing tools. Let's make a step forward. This was a very simple geoprocessing task with just a few geoprocessing tools. In case this has to be done several times or with different input data, or if we want to share this geoprocessing task with another person, then we can connect these geoprocessing tools and say it as geoprocessing model. To create a geoprocessing model, the ModelBuilder can be used. Esri defines ModelBuilder as a visual programming language for building geoprocessing workflows. ModelBuilder allows you to string together a sequence of geoprocessing tools where an output of one tool acts as input to another tool. The model builder requires no background in coding. It uses only ArcGIS tools and workflow. A model usually consists at least 3 elements: input data, geoprocessing tools, and output data. Here in this slide, you can see that the blue circles represents the inputs, yellow squares represent the tools, and the green circles represents the outputs, all connected together by black arrow line that go from and to processes, specifying the order in which tools should run. Geoprocessing model helps us to use various analysis, operation, and to create a new data in a continuous workflow. In this way, the geoprocessing workflow can be reused and can be shared with other users. Let's make a model for the previous exercise with transmission lines and bed case. First we have to open the ModelBuilder window from Geoprocessing menu to start creating a model. ModelBuilder has a drag and drop environment. Select the right tools, drag them to your model, open their input-output parameter form, and fill out the forms. Let's find the buffer, the intersect tool, and the Excel spreadsheet conversion tool in ArcToolbox, and simply drag and drop them to ModelBuilder window. The model elements are white in the first state, that is, they are not ready to run. This is because it is missing the input. To set the tool parameters, we have to double click on the tool symbol. The dialog box appears, and we can set these parameters. Let's set all the 3 geoprocessing parameters like before. Now, if we set the model's parameters, the model elements will be colored. That is, they are now ready to run. We can rename or modify the size or the position of each model object to make them readable and well aligned, or we can use the auto layout tool to rearrange them. If we use this auto layout tool, the result will be like we see in this next slide. If we finished with the model, we can verify it with the check mark icon. And if everything is okay, we can run the model with the run tool. That's the verify icon, the blue arrow. In this slide, it's marked with red square. If we build the model correctly with the right parameters, then the result will be the same like before when we did this manually. Now the colored model has a drop shadow behind the tools, and derive that data elements, indicating that it is finished running and the data was created. It was buffer, intersect, and the Excel file. If we click on the validate icon again, validate places all model components in the state of readiness to edit or run the model again. And the drop shadows will disappear behind tools and the derived data elements. You can run the entire model by clicking in the Run button. However, you can run each process one at a time, following the workflow by right-clicking processes and clicking Run. This allows you to isolate errors and fix them. The inputs and in this model are fixed. You cannot use them, or you can use them only with these names. The input was the batch point layer and the transmission lines, and the result will be intersect batch. Instead of static input and output, you need them to be dynamic as parameter. When you set the input data or output data as parameters, users can enter their own data and set their own output path without modifying the model itself. To create a model parameter, right-click a model variable, now for example transmission lines and batch, and choose model parameter. After this step, the model should have P for parameter next to each model parameter, and the model will ask the user to browse for an input map layer. Every time we run the model, not only the final result will be created, but also the intermediate data like buffer and intersect. Now, there are only two data sets, but there could be tons of it, and it could generate a lot of files and a lot of storage place. If we don't need them, we can turn these into temporary data sets and will exist only in memory. In order to achieve this, we have to double-click the output symbol and change the path with in-memory command. After this, if we run the model, only the final result, the Excel file, is created. In case you have to run the model several times or with different input data, or if you want to share this geoprocessing task with other person, then you can save the model. This saved model can be rerun with the same inputs to produce the same result, or with different data to produce new result. You can share your models with others in this way too. So how to save the model? The models are stored in toolboxes. So you have to select an existing toolbox or to create a new one. Now we will create a new toolbox with the name New Toolbox. In the ModelBuilder window, click on the Save icon, browse to a workspace, create a new toolbox with name New Toolbox, double-click it, and save the model with the name Bat Model. A model with name Bat Model is saved in the new toolbox named Toolbox. When a model is saved, the contents of all variables and parameters are saved, as well as the current state of each process. To open the saved model for editing, right-click the model tool in the catalog window or the ArcToolbox window and click Edit. The ModelBuilder window will appear with the saved model. In this model, the parameters in the tool dialog box are pre-populated with values. This was the path and the transmission lines. And if we share the model, or if we open the tool in ArcMap and there is not a layer named path or transmission lines, the dialog box will display an error because the layers do not exist. We can avoid this by clearing out the variables in the model. Double-click each model parameter in the ModelBuilder and empty it, and the model elements in the ModelBuilder will lose their color, indicating that there are no input data. The model will no longer run in ModelBuilder, but it will run using its tool dialog box. As I mentioned before, sharing the model is one of the primary uses of ModelBuilder. To create reusable workflows that can be run by different users or with different data. It is important for these users to have more information about the model itself. For that purpose, for what purpose it was made, how the model works, what can be the input and the output data, and so on. We can store all of this information in the model's property. The properties of a model tool include name, label, description, and the storage mode of the path names. The storage mode can be absolute or relative to the toolbox location. The name is used in scripting, so it must not contain spaces or special characters. The labels is displayed in the catalog and search windows and can contain spaces and special characters. The other solution to add additional information to the model is to label element to the model. The labels are graphical text elements and is not part of the processing sequence. It's just a visual information. Labels can be attached to ModelBuilder diagram, variable, tool, or connector. To add or label, right-click the ModelBuilder diagram, the element or connector, and click Create Label. You can use an iterator in ModelBuilder to perform batch processing. Iterators help repeat a process for a set of inputs in ModelBuilder. ArcGIS ModelBuilder has different types of iterator to repeat processes. It's for while feature selection, row selection, field value, multi-value, datasets, feature classes, files, rasters, tables, and workspaces. Each model can only use one iterator. For example, if you need to perform the same analysis for each feature class in a workspace, you could use the iterate feature class iterator to loop through each of the feature classes in a workspace. For example, in our case, if we want to set multiple distances for buffers at different increments in our model, we can use the for iterator. Using the buffer tool from our existing model, we can set from and to variables in different increments. Let's run our model with buffer values from 500 to 105,000, increasing by increments of 100. We can add iterator to our model in the ModelBuilder window from Insert menu under Iterators. Select the for iterator and fill the values. From values will be 500 to two values will be 150, and the increment under by value will be 100. Next, we have to connect the value with the buffer tool, and this can be done with connect icon. Just place a line between value and buffer object and select distance, because this is the value we iterate. It's very important to modify the output feature class name in the tools as inline variable substitution, because the output for is used as the buffer distance parameter in the buffer tool. If we run the model now, the result will be 10 Excel sheets with buffer values from 5,000 to 105,000, incremented with the value of 100. What is the difference between batch geoprocessing and the model with iterator? Both can be used to solve frequently repeated tasks, but while batch processing does allow to perform the same task in multiple datasets at the same time, it is still limited to only dealing with a single tool at a single time. With models, we can run a sequence of tools on multiple datasets at the same time. Another way to automate geoprocessing activities is with scripts. These are programming instructions in languages that can be used to direct GIS processes. Writing scripts are beyond the scope of this workshop, but you should at least know of their existence and be able to execute one. Models have Python scripts behind them. ArcGIS uses Python as a programming language, and it was introduced to the ArcGIS community with ArcGIS 9.0 version. Python is a free cross-platform open source programming language, and it is widely used and supported. It was originally developed by a Dutch programmer, Guido van Rossum, in 1990. Python is an object-oriented and interactive language. Van Rossum was reportedly a fan of the British commonly service known to Python's flying servers. And upon developing the open source programming language, he bore the name Python for the language and his non-profit institution, the Python Software Foundation. The easiest and the fastest way to create a Python script is to export a model to Python script. You can do it from model export to Python script. Using the text processor like Notepad, we can open the script and visually identify the variables and the processing, and we can modify the script if we need to. Studying scripts while knowing what they do is a good way to begin learning how to write scripts. Of course, scripts can be and frequently are written directly by human beings using a text processor rather than generated from a model. Exporting a model to a script does not always create a 100% reliable standalone script. Standalone scripts that are run outside our GIS require more explicit information, such as full file paths, than a script run inside RDS. How can we execute the Python script? The easiest way to use Python in ArcGIS is to enter Python commands into Python window, which can be accessed from the Geoprocessing menu. You can copy or type the Python code directly in this window, and it will be executed immediately by pressing the enter. Another solution is to run the script from the command prompt window. The first chore is to point the computer to the correct directory where the Python script exists, then type the name of the script and click enter. The screen should tell you the execution has begun. When it's finished, the prompt will appear. Last, we can ask when is useful to use the ModelBuilder. It's a good solution for GIS people who infrequently create automated workflows because it optimizes time and automates repetitive GIS tasks or short circuiting, and we get rid of human errors. When working on a very big project, big and advanced projects require complex models oftentimes. Uniform workflows in an organization or teams. There are several ways of carrying out a particular analysis in GIS in cases whereby you want a similar and uniform outcome. Models will come in really handy. When we want to share our geoprocessing workflow, or when we want to try out something new in our GIS. All right, I think I finished this presentation. It's almost here. It's almost noon. Thank you for your attention. If you have questions, you can ask me through the chat window. Thank you for listening to me, and goodbye.